the vast majority of divorces of couples that have been married for over 20 years are initiated by women.
Well, I know there's also a misnomer that men are predominantly, there's more people cheating from the man. And these days, especially after COVID, it seems like it's become very much, both sides are doing it. Welcome, everybody, to the Relaunch podcast. And today's show, I feel like I need to bring my drums out. I need to I might even be in the marching band at this point because I'm so excited about this guest. And I have been on his podcast and we had such an incredible conversation that I said, you got to come. We got to do this again. We can't let this party stop. And why is that? For the women that are listening right now, you are going to gain a lot of insight into the other gender, the other, if you're a female, the male out there. And if you're a male, you will learn a lot about yourself. And I have a great person for you to go and talk to. So today on the show, I've got Dr. Orest I'm going to try to say it right, Komarnyckyj. He
Perfect.
Hey, I did it. He is a 70-year-old former periodontal regenerative surgeon who has relaunched himself as a podcaster. The podcast is called Old Guy Talks to Me. And this is where we're going to dive deep. He is a men's life coach, helping men identify, create, and maintain the life they want and get their masculinity back. Ooh, he knows men. He knows them very well and what they really want. Ready for this, ladies? They actually want more romance with their lover, more control over their career, and more physical strength back. Dr. Orest is married to his first and only wife. She is a powerful businesswoman, and he is the father to two, and as he refers to them, his two badass daughters. Love this, and I am so excited to, first off, hear all of the incredible things that you are doing with men. And then I am going to have, unfortunately, my husband could not be listening right now, but Dr. Orest, so good to see you.
Thank you. With that intro, I kind of felt like, is there someone else on this program?
I think you did the same for me. And I'm like, I got to bring my A game here because you are just so, I would say it's infectious to talk to you, and you have such unique and different perspectives. And I do love a great relaunch story. And this one is near and dear to my heart because you're doing for men what I predominantly are doing for women as I see people come through. I do have men one-on-one clients, but here's the thing. What I love is that we're willing to take people where they are and relaunch them into the next best version of them, whatever it's going to be. But I want to talk to you about going from being a doctor, going from being a periodontal surgeon, and now in your own words, how is it being a men's coach and talking about sex and lifestyle and getting them to their next best version of themselves?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Hilary, for having me on your show, and it was a pleasure and a blast having you on mine. It's a two-edged sword. When you are considering a transition, I think it's important for you to really understand what's going on in your life at that point. There was a time that I was always a early adapter of technology and techniques. I mean, I was one of the first people probably in the nation to use a platelet-rich plasma for regenerative procedures in 2000. And now, everyone in any corner's got it. But I was always a early adapter, tip of the spear kind of person on therapies and things like that. And I really had a passion for being the best version of myself that I could be as a periodontist, as a periodontal regenerative surgeon. And then I realized that I no longer had that passion. I was no longer interested. And, even at 80% of who I was, which I never got to that point, I was pretty damn good still. I mean, I'm not, I had a very good reputation in my community amongst the other surgeons and amongst other people. And so I was functioning at a high standard, but I realized that the last thing I wanted to do was to go to another meeting, another dental meeting. And that's when I realized that it was time for me to leave. And there was also some technology changes that were occurring. I mean, I could have kept up with them, but we were making a big shift into a lot of computerized tomography, which I'd done some. I've actually even lectured on that. But there was a big change in terms of the technology that was occurring in dentistry.
But Dr. Orest, there's a lot of people that are out there right now that are doing something. They're doing what they were trained to do. They spent a lot of time getting to where they are today. And you said, hey, you were still doing it. You were still completely capable of doing this job.
Yeah.
But yet you're like, okay, no, there's something more. How did you end up picking to go into men's coaching?
Well, actually, the first thing was the podcasting. That's where it started. And I am by nature an attention whore.
I never would have guessed that.
You never would have guessed that. I do not enter a room quietly. And
everyone, if you could see him, I mean, honestly, he's got a big presence to him. If you're watching this over on YouTube, if you're checking it out, there's nothing small about Dr. Orest. Nothing.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because like when my wife and I, we network a lot because of what she does. She's an M&A advisor, and she helps people sell their companies. And so when we go to a business meeting or whatever, we never hang together. We are busy working the room. And it's not like, it's not like we're there just like, work in the room, but we're basically generally gregarious people. And so we enjoy meeting people. And so we don't spend a lot of time doing that together. So I've always been kind of an outgoing person, an outgoing personality. And you will definitely hear me. You'll probably hear me before you see me. And so that was that. And I always had been a kind of a entertainer. Even when I was lecturing on dental stuff, I was always entertaining, and the way I would be entertaining is I would say what people were thinking, but too afraid to say. And so that was kind of my way of connecting with the audience.
Right. That's the best way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is because
all a spade a spade.
Yeah, I mean, let me put it this way. I was the last speaker at a 2-day dental meeting at 5:00.
Well, that's like one of those.
Yeah. And the first thing I got up and I said, like, you know what? I want to thank you all for being here because I know everybody's thinking about happy hour right now and the cocktail party is coming.
That's so good.
And everybody like started laughing. I said, but thank you for sticking around for my presentation. And I hope you find some value with it. And then you know what? I
have to say something before you go on, because I don't want to miss asking you this. So you and your wife are in a room and you both are mingling on your own and you're talking to men. How do you open up about what you do?
Well, I usually don't. I usually ask people what they do.
Okay.
And then if they have any sort of self-awareness, in about 5 to 10 minutes, they'll realize that they've been talking all about themselves for the last 10 minutes, and they ask me what I do.
Finally, the guy will be like, "Oh, by the way, Dr. Orest, what do you do?" And you're like, and then how do you answer it? How do you answer that question? What do you do?
I'm a podcaster, and my podcast is called Old Guy Talks to Me, and it's based out of self-interest. I deal with topics that are of interest to older guys and guys in general, actually, not just older guys, but guys in general, and those they love. I spend a lot of time in the anti-aging space. Spent a lot of time there, talking about testosterone, talking about stem cells, peptides, all sorts of regenerative procedures. Spent a lot of time in the relationship space. Talk about sex a lot. Talk about scotch. Talk about cigars. And then I'll have interesting people that do interesting things. Probably the most famous person I've had on my program was a former world champion, UFC champion, Forrest Griffin. And he's probably the most famous people. I've had a lot of people on my program that have been on Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan. Actually, one of the world's top experts on ketosis, Dom DeGastino. And I had to control my guests sometimes because Dom talks. He was on a program with someone else who was another really smart PhD woman, and they started talking, and it was like they were talking Klingon. I have a scientific background. I had no idea what they were talking about. They were just using big words that had like 7 or 8 syllables.
Okay, hold on. So let's use small words. And I know people are interested in getting some key takeaways. And as a female, and I think that I mentioned this to you before, is that I have crazy hobbies, and every once in a while I do crazy things. And I decided at one point to go get my certification as a matchmaker, because I felt it would really, after 20 years of coaching, I was like, you know what? I want people to start dating themselves, because if we start there, we might actually get to the point where people start liking and loving themselves again. So I want to hear, because this is so fascinating, whether a woman out there right now is listening, whether she's married, whether she's single. Let's talk about middle-aged men. Okay. And let's talk about testosterone. What's going on with men? What happens to men when they hit midlife?
Okay. This is an interesting phenomenon, and I've said this before, so it's not coming as a big revelation. I've been on testosterone optimization for over 25 years. Okay. I started when I was in my early 40s and have continued on. So what happens is, and Hilary, this is actually a problem, a challenge that goes actually beyond middle age. And I'll get back a bit, kind of circle back, talk about young men. But as your testosterone goes down, and okay, let me backtrack here. Your doctor will tell you your lab values are normal. Okay, well, normal isn't healthy. Okay, normal body mass in the United States is not healthy. So normal is not healthy. And the ranges, the lab companies have just actually recently dropped down the ranges, where the top normal used to be 1100. Now it's got dropped down to 960 or somewhere in that range. So the levels, the normal levels are dropping. There's a thing called the male normative aging study, a huge study done in the Northeast that talks about testosterone, the generational decline of testosterone levels in men. So men had 30 years ago had a lot more testosterone than they do today.
Okay, but are you talking about, you said, is it an age? So men who, let's say, were 50 in the past, correct, would have had more testosterone than men today.
Right. Yeah. They say about 15% more. Yeah.
15% less testosterone. Okay. Well,
Today.
so what does, let's just back up for a second. What does testosterone for a man, what does it do for him?
Okay.
And again, I have so many questions, so don't go too deep. Give me that like simple answer so I can keep going, because I need to talk sex. I need to talk about all of the things that I know my listeners want to hear.
Okay. So the first thing is that it really helps you with your mood. For me, it's a powerful antidepressant. I was in New Zealand for 3 weeks with my youngest daughter on her. We did a kind of with both my daughters. I did a father-daughter trip. The oldest one I took to Iceland, and the other one went to New Zealand. And I did not want to go across an international border with testosterone. My wife picked it up within 10 days that I was off my testosterone in terms of my attitude.
Really?
Yeah. So that's one thing, is that, you talk about, the movie with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon, Grumpy Old Ben. That's exactly what happens. You see that. You see that in guys that happens. They become very grumpy. They become
indecisive. What's interesting? Can I tell you something that just popped into my head? So women, it's known as menopause when we go through what's happening, and men quickly say, oh, you're going through that. It used to be like, oh, you're having your period. Are you on your menstruation cycle? All that. But for men, we don't say, oh, your testosterone has declined. Why are you being such a
The challenge is, and actually I've done a couple of interviews. Actually, one of the best ones is with my friend Elizabeth Urth, who's an MD. She runs the Older Longevity Institute, and we did a 2-part thing on women's hormone replacement therapy, because that's something that guys and women run into. But the difference is that menopause tends to be relatively abrupt. It happens within a couple of years or whatever. You start seeing the changes, and they tend to be relatively abrupt. Decline in testosterone happens over a long period of time. So you accommodate to it just like you would to a bad pair of shoes. Okay. So you never really notice that you're like, you don't wake up one day and go like, you may say, oh, I don't have the same energy I did when I was in my 20s or 30s, but you accommodate to it because it happens over such a long period of time. And so that's the thing. The other things, very quickly, there's lots of rumors, and you can go to Mayo Clinic and look at, they have a consensus paper on the safety of testosterone. It helps you with your heart, helps you keep fat off. My family tends to be fat, so it's always a challenge. Helps you keep muscle on, helps you with your bone density, decisiveness, and as I said, attitude is probably the biggest thing.
So why is there such controversy about men taking testosterone?
Because the medical field, and my disclaimer is, I am not a physician. Consult with the appropriate healthcare professional. You're responsible for your own shit. And then, so that's kind of my medical disclaimer. Results will vary too. That's the other one I forgot to mention. So is that because there were a couple of papers that were written a couple of decades ago that had turned out to be very bad science. And they've been very, very much disputed and torn apart. And even some of the authors have actually basically rescinded their conclusions on this. But the FDA put some sort of label on this stuff, and most physicians practice what I call defensive medicine.
Say that again. What kind of defensive?
Defensive medicine. They're working not to get sued, and so you have to find a doctor who is knowledgeable in this space. Now, right now, there's all sorts of these T-mills, all these T clinics that are out there. And some of them may be good, but I expect a lot of them are just, these are cash cows. These are cash cows because none of this is covered by insurance. And finding the right doctor to get you through this is, and to not be afraid of the I'm going to say out of the normal range values for testosterone.
So really look at those results and really, identify.
Yeah, be skeptical. I mean, I have
think
not,
it's important.
I've not been able to verify this through an actual lab report, but one of my physician friends who is in this space told me that 20 years ago, the high normal was 1500.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's
and today you're
960.
saying 960. Yes.
960.
So for those listening and wondering, what's wrong with me, and I laugh because, as you said, menopause. I've been perimenopause for I can't tell you how long. Finally, come on, what's happening? So I can kind of relate to this whole thing with the testosterone that it's kind of going over time. But do you recommend? And I know this is just a recommendation that every man take testosterone.
I think that there's I'm not every is a big statement,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to say that the vast majority of men would benefit from testosterone therapy.
Got it.
And I mean, a vast majority.
Now, let me ask you a question though. Does testosterone also help with sexuality and sexual encounters, like helping with the whole process of sex?
Okay. The testosterone will affect your sex drive,
Mm-hmm.
but testosterone will not improve erectile dysfunction issues.
That's where I was going with it. So when you think about this, and a lot of women who, let's just talk about divorce. I was a divorced woman. I was out there in the single world for almost 7 years. I was surprised at what I noticed and what people I was working with were noticing about men. And here's the thing, when you get a divorce and all of a sudden you go back out there and you remember what it was like when you were younger and men were younger, and all of a sudden you get these men that are like, they're not, it's not what you remember. And so what you're saying is testosterone will help them feel better, have a bigger libido, but it will not help them maintain an erection.
Right. And there are lots of very good minimally invasive therapies. And I actually did I actually done a couple of podcasts on this also. There's a at-home acoustic wave device. There's all sorts of things that are out there to help improve men's erectile dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And then the one that's that's the most invasive, but it has the highest success rate is a penile implant.
Wow! How many men get that?
I don't know. I don't know because.
My God! But that's something we rarely hear about. That is an option for them.
Yeah. And so I think it's it's out there, and I know there's lots of big manufacturers in the medical device space, including Boston Scientific, which is a huge. A huge component, has a huge section. And I had a guy that I interviewed on my thing that has he's working on a patch. He's looking for seed for some more money to help premature ejaculation. And so things like that. But
is that a common problem with men in their middle age and beyond?
I don't know. He seems to think
there is.
He thinks there's a market, and that's probably true to a certain extent. One of the things I talk about in my one of my modules in my coaching program, it's how to get laid more frequently without begging. And
okay, what's the answer? Give us the tips now.
Yeah, you have to buy my program. That's like.
All right, well, give us one tip on that, because especially if you've been in a long-term relationship, and if men are not on testosterone, how do you suggest to keep it exciting and spicy? Because
think of which one I want to give you.
I am going to get an answer out of you, even if I can't go in and do the module.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that most guys have gone to taking things for granted, and so is the woman. It's not a one way. This is not a because if I'm talking to a bunch of women, I'm going to say like, okay, there's two people in this thing, and I was interviewed someone once, and I said, so she was talking about her husband, and I said, so when your husband comes home, what does he say? He asked me how my day went, and I said, well, what's your reply? He goes like, fine. I go like, well, that's a real conversation opener. The tonality there was just like, yeah, that makes me want to really delve into your day and find out more about what went on.
Right.
But I'll give you one thing. It's a big thing, but if you try to do this without doing all the other stuff in my program, you're going to screw it up. When was the last time you made your significant other feel like a woman?
That's good. And here's what I would challenge men: understand what it means to make a woman feel like a woman.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things is that we take things for granted, and I'm going to give one more thing because nobody's going to listen. You give people advice and they don't listen, they don't follow it until they pay you a lot of money to do it. And that. I mean, being until you can tell somebody, you can give somebody all the information that they need, but until they pay you money for it, they're not going to listen because there's no value to. I shouldn't say there's no value to it, but they have no stake in it until they pay you the bucks. The other thing that I would say is stop saying, I want more sex. Stop saying.
Hold on. Who's saying?
The men usually say that.
I want more sex.
I want more sex. I want more sex. I want more sex. I want more sex. And quite frankly, that's a kind of a, I think for a lot of women.
I'm laughing as I'm sitting there. I'm like, who's saying that? Is it the man or the woman? As I'm thinking.
Well, maybe sometimes, a lot of times, I don't know because I hear it from the other, a lot of guys complaining, that they're not. And what you're saying when you're saying I want more sex is it says like, let me just use your vagina for a few minutes, and then when I'm done, I'll give it back to you. It'll be a little used, but you can still have it back. And it's kind of like, no. There's a term. I'm in a group that's that we talk a lot about this, and then it talks about that, and it says sex without a relationship is vaginal masturbation.
So do you remember the magazine Cosmopolitan?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well,
is it still around?
I think it is. Maybe it's online. I don't even know because these are not the articles that I'm reading anymore. But I remember that there was one that said, how many times a week is the norm for people to have sex in a healthy relationship? And I really believe that is where we started to put ourselves in. I think the answer was like, you have to be at least doing it 2 times a week. And so many women started to go to their husband and say, we need to have sex at least twice a week. And, as long as the man was viral enough and virile enough to actually make it happen, he's like, sure, no problem. But what are you seeing as relationships, we're getting into that next phase from an age perspective? And are the expectations that, because I know women, as we age, we have a tendency to want more of it. Men, according to some of the research, that I have done don't want it as often as they used to. But what's really the answer in your mind when you're talking about all the men that you work with?
Well, I think, one of the things gets back to the whole testosterone thing, because you can't fake it to a large extent. The other thing,
a woman can, but a man can't, right?
Yeah, exactly. We remember that. Was it when Harry met Sally?
Oh yeah, we all know that one very well.
Yeah. So I think that, it's kind of interesting that you say that, because I'm only hearing it from I hear it only from guys that, their wife is, I'm not interested, I'm too tired. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to put out a LinkedIn post, a survey, to ask women what does that mean when they say that. So
that's really funny on LinkedIn. That's a good one.
Yeah, I will see if it gets past the LinkedIn censors.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had a few things that have not gotten past the LinkedIn censors.
I bet.
So that's kind of an interesting phenomenon. Again, it's really about some of the things that you can do to maintain that relationship interesting. And again, I said, but it also depends on where you are. If you are, kind of like just need a little bit of a nudge to get more, excitement, more fun, whatever, into a relationship, that's one thing. But some couples have not had sex in years.
I know.
And
that breaks my heart when you hear people that, have been together and they're just like, there's no, interest. They're not. It really, what do you recommend to those people that come to you to say, hey, I haven't had sex with my wife in years?
Well, I think, it all starts with communication. I mean, it's a hard conversation. It's not an easy, it's not a pleasant conversation. But it's a hard conversation, and the hard conversations need to be had. I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson, and he writes in his book that talks about, if you don't deal with a problem early or challenge early, it tends to grow. It grows and grows, and it morphs into something much bigger. Maybe you have a lack of a relationship at home, but next thing you know, in 15 years, there's affairs going on, and half your shit is gone, maybe more, depending on which state you live in. And, and all of a sudden, that inattention to that problem when it was small and easy to deal with, just morphs into something much, much bigger. But the whole thing is it starts off with communication. I read an interesting thing which totally stunned me, and maybe you're familiar with. Who Dan Kennedy is, right?
Sure. Yep. Marketing.
Okay. I was reading his book, No BS Marketing to the Affluent.
Yep.
And I did not realize, and he's a great person of statistics, and when he says something, he's got data to back it up. The vast majority of divorces of couples that have been married for over 20 years are initiated by women.
Well, I know there's also a misnomer that men are predominantly, there's more people cheating from the man, and these days, especially after COVID, it seems like it's become very much, both sides are doing it. But how relevant do you think, in order now, if you physically can't do it, that's one thing, but I'm talking about relationships that are sexless. I mean, what do you recommend to a man that comes to see you that it's just like, there's nothing there? Do you believe that you can have a solid relationship without that intimacy?
I personally do not. I know that
I think it's so important.
I think people will argue that point with me, but I will say that it's not. I don't think it's highly unlikely. Maybe if and then a lot of times I want to deal with. I used to love statistics. I'm not trying to deal with stuff that's in the forced standard deviation. Where it's like 0.001, percentage possibility. I mean,
Right.
let's, let's just deal with stuff that actually, has a good chance of happening. And so consequently, I don't think it's possible. We, as humans, we crave physical intimacy, and it's not just sex. Physical intimacy is more than just sex.
Maslow's hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That need for love and that need for connection and that need for, we were given this incredible, sexual ability. And, I get women that come to me and just say, I'm going to be celibate the rest of my life. And with them, I ask the question, why? Why would you want that? Let's work on getting you back out there and feeling like, as I said earlier, you want to date you again. Let's start there. Yeah. But as we're wrapping this up right now, is there something that has happened with a client that you were like, one of those crazy stories? We all as coaches have crazy stories about people. Do you have any of those like moments where you're like, oh my gosh, this is new? Or can you share one of them?
It's always interesting how you end up going down a path. And it's really surprising about where you go and how you end up. And I think the one that kind of, there's two that comes to mind. One is that rekindling, going through my process. But the process starts actually with you. The most important relationships you have is with you. And unless that is in order, none of this other stuff works. Okay. If that's in order,
totally, you're
golden. You're on the fast track. But if you have a horrible conversation, and so one of the things that, and this is kind of in general, and this I'm not answering your question specifically, but one of the biggest things is the conversations that we have in our head with ourselves. And if you don't have control of that conversation, and I was there. I mean, I was for many years of my life, I was in full victim mode. That's the way I was brought up. And nothing was ever my responsibility. Things happened. They were out of my control, blah, blah, blah. My family did that. My father was really not particularly, he was actually a horrible male role model. Did the whole thing, borrowed money from relatives that never got paid back and all sorts of shit like that. Sent my mother off to work so that he didn't work. And all that stuff. But the conversations that you have with yourself are the most important. And that's one of the first things that I do in my program. The first thing is actually identify what you want, why you want it, and then how. And the what, because I know Simon Sinek says, start with why. And I go like, no, bullshit. Start with what. The why comes after the what. The why doesn't come before the what.
You are so funny here.
Yeah, I'd love to be on stage with them. I tell them, no, it's bullshit. Start with what, and the why actually will sometimes clarify whether the what is really something that you want or is it something that you engage in wishful thinking. For a decade, I talked about wanting to learn how to yodel. Because I thought it'd be kind of fun to go to Switzerland and yodel. They have a redneck festival, which the elite Swiss hate. So but it's a redneck where they have a yodeling contest and boulder throwing and that kind of shit. But I realized that when I was presented with the opportunity to take yodeling lessons, I didn't act on it. So I didn't really want it. It was just wishful thinking.
But let me ask you, what if? So you're saying start with the what, and can a man, I know that we say women can fall in love with men over time. They may not be physically attracted to them out of the gates, but they can become physically attracted. Can men do the same with women? Can they, if they don't find the woman attractive initially, and we're talking sex still, are they able to have sex with a woman that they don't find attractive? Yeah.
Well,
We're ending on this question, so you better answer it really well.
Well, the obvious answer is alcohol.
I've heard that you actually, as a man, if you're not physically attracted, there is, I mean, I guess now with drugs, you could potentially have that happen with a little alcohol and the scotch included. But,
right. But you know, Hilary, I mean, I don't, it's a little bit about this whole libido thing too, which has maybe nothing to do with the actual woman in the relationship. It has to do, you know, and guys, I mean, I use this line all the time, you know, oh, it's not you, it's me. And I actually thought that was true, but it was in reality, actually, it was me, but I was lying when I was saying that. You know, guys do that all the time, which brings me to rule number 3. I have rules of life. Rule number 3 is all boys lie. The more they want something, the better they lie. And if you have girls, the first lie a girl will hear is, I'll love you forever. As they're trying to get their hand down your pants.
Well, Dr. Orest, unfortunately, we have to end it on that note. And I want to say,
Hilary, can I say just one more thing?
Yeah.
I want to circle back to this because it's just really important when we're talking about testosterone. What's happening also is that there is a crisis in testosterone in young men. There are men showing up, young men in their mid and early 20s in doctors' clinics with numbers of 300.
No way. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. It's called endocrine disrupting compounds. And maybe we can talk about that at some point in the future. But it's a real issue. And I believe that it's playing out in so many different ways, especially a lot of women are saying, like, where are the men? So it basically has to do with testicles not developing properly. And so it's not just testosterone, but it's also a sperm.
Oh, that breaks my heart. And if anyone is listening, I think this is super important to make sure that our kids hear this message and go and get help because it's not normal. And there are things that you can do. Well, as we are wrapping, how can people get in touch with you, hear more, and get into the world of Dr. Orest?
Okay, the first thing is you need to subscribe to my free digital magazine. And you get that by going to thestandard.academy/magazine. And it's articles on several people that I've interviewed. They wrote articles. They were kind enough to write articles. One of the featured articles is one secret place to touch a woman. And the secret place is not her clitoris, because that's not a secret place. You know, everybody knows that. And the other thing is listen to me on my podcast, Old Guy Talks to Me. And you can find me at the standard.academy. And if you want, you can get on a short discovery call with me, and we can find out whether I can help you or you're just a lost cause. I'll tell you that too.
We're gonna make sure that we have all of this in the show notes. And as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, for giving us some of this wisdom that you have acquired over the years working with men. And for all of those listening, if you have found this to be something that you're really resonating with, these conversations, please make sure that you go over and give us a 5-star review. It would mean the world to me. And also share this. Share the Relaunch podcast with others that you know it could help out with in their own relaunches. And so until next time, make sure that you are living now, loving now, and relaunching now. Take care until next time, everyone. Bye-bye. If you like this video and want to get more like it, head over here.